My name is Chaya Lester with the Poetic Commentary on the Torah. This week we read Parshat Mishpatim, the Parsha of laws. Amongst the plethora of laws there inscribed is the well-known injunction of Ayin Tachat Ayin, an eye for an eye. It states that if there's an injury, the penalty should be an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, wound for wound. The sages agree that the implications of such a law are barbaric and greatly at odds with the moral endeavor of Torah. In the movie The Fiddler on the Roof, Tevye sums up this Jewish sensibility when he quips, "If everybody lived by an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, the world would be blind and toothless." Indeed, according to halacha, an eye for an eye comes to be understood to refer to monetary compensation for physical damages. And yet, the glaring question stands, if this legality was not meant to be taken literally, then why is it worded in such a potentially misleading manner? Commentators offer a rich round of rationales, each with their own beauty and merit. I would like to offer an additional layering of explanation, an explanation based on the mystical belief in the radical oneness of all existence. For from the mystical perspective of ultimate unity, the injured and the injurer are in fact one and the same. When I take your eye, I am taking my own, for we are inherently intertwined. From this enlightened vantage point, the notion of an eye for an eye is less of a prescription than it is a description. It doesn't so much prescribe what should be done in a case of damages as it describes what actually metaphysically occurs in the course of an injury. Thus, an eye for an eye can be read not as a civil law of an ancient society, but as a metaphysical law of the universe. It's an elegant expression of the very basic fact of the oneness of all people, whether friend or foe. And of course, in the case of Mishpatim, we are clearly dealing with foes. Most particularly, when we're talking about our enemies, does this unitary viewpoint shudder forth in its most challenging grandeur, when we're able to apprehend the truth of oneness, even and especially with our foes, then we are privy to the highest and most subtle of mystical truths. In her invaluable book, You Are What You Hate, Sarah Yehudit Schneider weaves together Hasidic and Kabbalistic sources which offer a vision of a spiritually productive approach to enemies, a vision based on the notion of ultimate unity. She writes that our enemies hold fallen slivers of our souls. In fighting with us, they are trying, albeit in a diluted way, to connect back to their own root, which is really within us. We cannot complete our life mission until we've collected those scattered pieces of ourselves which are embedded within our enemy. An essential step in the collection of these scattered shards is the awareness of our enmeshment with the very ones who would do us wrong. Our own redemption comes when we recognize the metaphysical fact of unity, even with our enemies. The injunction here in Parshat Mishpatim thus stands as a testimony to a state of unitary consciousness. And from that apex of interconnection flows ultimate compassion and the sanctification of life itself. As it says in Leviticus, love your neighbor, your friend as yourself. I am Hashem. The Hebrew word for friend, neighbor, reyecha, paradoxically shares the same root as ra, the word for evil. We could thus reread this pivotal line as saying, love your evil like yourself. What's more, the phrase that follows, I am Hashem, takes on a whole new meaning. For when we're able to love another, particularly an enemy, as ourselves, then we meet and access the deepest knowing of godliness. So may it be in our days that we find that our conflicts are unraveled and laid to rest with the knowledge of our essential and overwhelming interconnectivity and oneness. The poem I'm about to share elaborates on this idea of interconnection between the injured and the injuring. Eye for an eye. Read crime in all, not criminal. Ours to contain, ours to dissolve. Let's sentence self till spoken right, lest one hand stab the other in spite of self and body same. My cripple crafts the other's maim. The convict with conviction calls, we are a chain enchained to all, and I myself will not be free till jury claims its injury, and I'll not give a guilty plea till judge confess his culpability. And eye for eye and tooth for tooth encodes this law of vastest truth, that we are all but one and same. To injure another inflicts our own pain, and lest our world end toothless blind, let disparate sparks unify And only then, enrobed as one, will we behold the clinching bond, with sight restored and toothy grins, with bruises cured and wounds on mend, will calm our clans, so vengeance clad, and guard each other's eyes and hands, that we may have the sight to see an age of peace sans injury, and share the shards held in between these hands we palm with enemies, and once where blind, now vision blessed, to see how friend and foe enmesh.